Thunders was born John Anthony Genzale in Queens, New York, the second child of Josephine Genzale and Emil Genzale, both of Italian descent. Thunders had an older sister, Mariann, and he first lived in East Elmhurst and then Jackson Heights. His first musical performance was in the winter of 1967 with The Rain. Shortly thereafter, he played with Johnny and the Jaywalkers under the name Johnny Volume at Quintano School for Young Professionals, around the corner from Carnegie Hall on 56th Street near 7th Avenue. In 1968, he began going to the Fillmore East and Bethesda Fountain in Central Park on weekends. His older sister Mariann started styling his hair like Keith Richards. In late 1969, he got a job as a sales clerk at Dinah's Leather Shop on Bleecker Street in the West Village, and started trying to put a band together. He and his girlfriend Janis Cafasso went to see the Rolling Stones at Madison Square Garden in November 1969, and they appear in the Maysles film Gimme Shelter. Thunders bass guitarist Arthur Killer Kane later wrote about Thunders' guitar sound, as he described arriving outside the rehearsal studio where they were meeting to jam together for the first time. I heard someone playing a guitar riff that I myself didn't know how to play. It was raunchy, nasty, rough, raw, and untamed. I thought it was truly inspired. Adding his sound was rich and fat and beautiful like a voice. The New York Dolls were signed to Mercury Records with the help of A&R man Paul Nelson. Thunders recorded 2 albums with the band New York Dolls and Too Much Too Soon. They were managed by Marty Thau and booked by Leber Krebs. Subsequently, they worked with Malcolm McLaren for several months, later becoming a prototype for the Sex Pistols. In 1975, Thunders and Nolan left the band. Thunders later blamed McLaren for the band's demise. Johansen and Sylvain continued playing along with Peter Jordon, Tony Machine and Chris Robison as the New York Dolls until late 1978. Thunders formed the Heartbreakers with former New York Dolls drummer Jerry Nolan and former television bassist Richard Hell. Walter Lure, former guitarist for the New York City punk band The Demons, joined them soon after. After conflict arose between Thunders and Hell, Hell left to form Richard Hell and the Voidoids and was replaced by Billy Rath. With Thunders leading the band, the Heartbreakers toured America before going to the UK to join the Sex Pistols, The Clash and The Damned on the Anarchy Tour. The group stayed in the UK throughout 1977, where their popularity was significantly greater than in the US, particularly among punk bands. While in the UK, they were signed to Track Records and released their only official studio album, Lamph, an abbreviation for Like a Motherfucker. LAMF was received positively by critics, but was criticized for its poor production. Displeased with the production, the band members individually remixed the record, a competition which culminated in drummer Jerry Nolan quitting in November 1977. Shortly thereafter, the Heartbreakers disbanded. Thunders stayed in London and recorded the first of a number of solo albums entitled Beginning with So Alone in 1978. The drug-fueled recording sessions featured a core band of Thunders, bassist Phil Lynott, drummer Paul Cook, and guitarist Steve Jones, with guest appearances from Chrissie Hynde, Steve Marriott, Walter Lure, Billy Rath, and Peter Parrott. The CD version of the album contains 4 bonus tracks, including the single Dead or Alive, and a cover of the early Mark Bolan song The Wizard. Soon afterwards, Thunders moved back to the US, joining former Heartbreakers Walter Lure, Billy Rath, and sometimes Jerry Nolan for gigs at Max's Kansas City. Around this time, Thunders played a small number of gigs at London's The Speakeasy Club with a lineup including Cook and Jones, Henri Paul on bass and Judy Nylon, and Paddy Paladin as backup vocalists. In late 1979, Thunders moved to Detroit with his wife Julie and began performing in a band called Gang War. They recorded several demos and performed live several times before disbanding. Zodiac Records released an EP of their demos in 1987, and in 1990, they also released an album titled Gang War, which was credited to Thunders and Kramer. In the 1980s, Thunders lived in Paris and Stockholm with his wife and daughter. In 1985, he released Que Sera Sera, a collection of new songs with his then band The Black Cats and Crawfish, a duet with former Snatch vocalist Paddy Paladin. 3 years later, he again teamed up with Paladin to release Copycats, a covers album. The album produced by Paladin featured a wide assortment of musicians to recreate the 1950s and 1960s sound of the originals, including Alex Balanescu on violin, Bob Andrews on piano, The Only Ones John Perry and others on guitar, and a horn section. Rumors surround Thunder's death at the Inn on St. Peter Hotel in New Orleans, Louisiana on April 1991. Thunders apparently died of drug-related causes, but it has been speculated that it was the result of foul play. According to his autobiography Lobotomy: Surviving the Ramones, D.D. Ramone took a call in New York City the next day from Stevie Klassen.